All right, thank you everybody for joining us and welcome to the Choroideremia Research Foundation webinar. And it's been a while since we've done one of these, so I'm super excited that this is one that, that I'm gonna have this conversation with a very good friend of mine and someone that has been such an amazing person as a part of our foundation. Probably a couple months ago, the staff, Corey, Eric, Kathy, and I were talking, and it's been on my heart for a while to do some kind of a webinar on resiliency and how we can find resiliency, especially in the season that we're in with COVID and the pandemic, and then adding another layer on top of that with vision changes and how hard it is sometimes to find that hope and encouragement and, again, resiliency. So as we were talking about those things, those of us that know him knew right away who we wanted to invite, and that would be our guest tonight, Jeff Benelli. Many of you know Jeff. He has been a member of the foundation for a super long time, and he not only has been one of our major fundraisers, he's sat on the board of directors, he's been on the executive committee. Currently, he's hosting the registry. He created it, he's running it, monitoring it, and he's done some amazing things for us. And he's been a real good friend, a mentor, and there is probably nobody better that I know that can talk about resiliency and finding strength in tough times. So we are recording this. And I want to make sure that I do thank our sponsors. They generously donate and provide funding for us to hold these webinars. And I want to make sure I get them all because there's 4 now. That would be Biogen, Spark, Santen, and Genentech. So getting that done. We are going to take questions, guys, questions and comments at the end. It's a webinar format. We had to switch last minute. Again, my apologies, and thank you for your patience with me tonight. So if you have comments, I'll make sure I'm going to monitor them. Jeff and I are going to have a conversation, and he's asked that we kind of hold questions till the end because that helps with the flow. So Jeff, what do you think about tonight? What do you hope is the outcome for tonight?
Well, I think I'm probably here because I'm old more than any other reason. But seriously, I think that tonight is about roads traveled and lessons learned. I've always thought that, we all have our personal stories, and that every one of us can learn from each other. But let's face it, as a CHMer, those roads are traveled a lot less than with a lot of people. I mean, it's not like when you go to the grocery store or to a ball game that you see 2 or 3 of us around saying, "Hey, how's your choroideremia doing?" So learning from each other isn't as frequent unless we take advantage of and make additional effort like we're doing here tonight. So that's why this is so important, I believe. As far as me in particular, I think I might offer 2 areas that are maybe a bit unique. And I hope some of that uniqueness will lead to some benefit for others. The first is, as you mentioned, I've worn, a variety of hats related to the CRF through the years. And when I came on, I really didn't think I brought a whole lot with me to the board or to the executive committee. I mean, I've never felt like I was really a very good leader of any kind. And medical concepts don't come easy to me. Julie's the doctor in the house, my wife. I've never run a business. I'm not a lawyer. My accounting is average on a good day. But all that said, as my first boss kind of described me one time in a public setting, he said, Jeff's like a bulldog. Once he sinks his teeth into something, he won't let go. And my wife would probably say Jeff just keeps beating his head against a brick wall until either the brick wall gives a little or his head cracks. But I think the second area that I feel is probably or my situation might be a bit more unique is the timing when I found out I had choroideremia. I didn't find out until I was like 27 years old. And I feel like that's pretty late compared to most people. So
How did you find out, and what did you do when you found
no,
out the news?
well, I just finished my college years, and they were pretty hectic because I had to work my way through it. And I graduated. I did have a bachelor's and a master's in mathematics, and I was immediately hired as an actuarial student. And aside from studying for actuarial exams that go with that profession, life was great all of a sudden. I was on my own in a new city, and I had a little money in my pocket for the first time. And it just felt like life was great. And I felt like I had the beginnings of a great career going. And a few years after that, I even met my future wife, Julie. So it was kind of a period in my life when I felt like all the hard work had paid off, and I was just starting to reap the benefits of life's rewards. And it was just kind of like this I made it feeling. It was really incredible. And well, that feeling didn't last very long, because it was soon after that I started having frequent visual mishaps. And I was like knocking over display stands in the grocery store, and I was like regular bumping into people and having frequent near-miss car accidents. And I enjoyed sports a lot back then. And I remember while I was like playing basketball, the ball would like come off the rim and just hit me in the head. Or when I played tennis, I would sit there and search for the ball forever, and it was lying on the ground close enough to touch. And I had no idea what was going on with me, because I'd visit ophthalmologists or optometrists, and they'd say I had 20/20 vision. But it was after a series of medical visits with ophthalmologists that I finally found one who diagnosed me with choroideremia. And he described it to me as the progression of choroideremia, as we know, is significant vision loss beginning kind of around your mid-20s, but that's en route to complete blindness, he said, somewhere in your mid to late 50s is what I was told back then. And obviously, like all of us, I was shocked, and I started the pleading, saying, this can't be happening to me. That immediately science will solve this, right? They're going to find a cure before I really go blind, right? And the guy just looked at me and said that there's rare retinal disorders out there, and choroideremia is rarer than most of those. And he said that though it actually has all the characteristics of a disease that could be cured, it probably wouldn't be, because it just didn't affect enough people. He said no one was studying it, and no one probably would study it. And finally, he said, you just need to accept a life without your eyesight. And that was back in 1994. And like I said, I was 27 years old. And to my knowledge, Beth, at the time, no one was studying choroideremia at that time. If they did, it was very little. So,
So what did you do then?
Well, I call the period next that came was the period where I had to say goodbye to being normal. I lost a ton of vision. I quit going to movies, and I quit playing all sports, and I changed my career path, and I stopped studying to be a credentialed actuary. And I lost my independence during this phase, and because I was now needing assistance for like finding restrooms in public places and things like that. And I actually almost called off my wedding because of how unfair I thought it would be for Julie to be married to a blind man, or not to mention if we wanted to have children and raising kids as such. And finally, at the age of 31, I actually did give up driving. And I felt that, even though I wasn't dying, I felt like the life that I loved was being taken from me. And this is what I've always referred to as the sneaky evil of choroideremia. Since the significant vision loss doesn't start until your mid-20s, it allows you to grow up as a normal kid, with all those hopes and dreams that come with that. And then right when you're starting that new life as an adult, it starts ripping all that away. And you have to start over and learn how to live a life as a blind man.
We've seen that with a lot of our friends, haven't we? You know, hearing about these stories and the heartache that comes with that. So it's tremendously challenging. Would you say you were depressed, or what were the emotions that you were going through at the time?
I was absolutely depressed. And, regardless, I tried to live a normal life.
Mhm.
I got married and I did have two beautiful boys.
Mhm.
I was doing my best to appear to be happy and to be a good husband and father, but inside my depression and anger just grew and grew. I mean, choroideremia has it kind of toys with you because I had enough vision to see what other fathers could do with their sons and how wonderful a normal life could be. And yet I couldn't even manage basic human functions by myself. When I was with my boys when they were young, I couldn't even be left alone with them in public because I couldn't keep them safe. And I knew it wasn't just my life being affected. Choroideremia affects everyone you're close to. So I was completely tore up inside for a lot of years.
Wow. So how did you learn how to cope and endure this, kind of getting to, how we each have our stories. But what did you do to cope and endure and to come out of that?
Now that's the $100 question, right? And
Mhm.
unfortunately, there definitely is no big red easy button to push, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I honestly think keeping our emotions in check will be a part of a CHMer's life forever. But I'd say the beginnings of sorts for me came from some persistent old man who was one of the founders of this dinky organization that began around 2000 called the Choroideremia Research Foundation. And some of you might know the guy I'm talking about. His name is Corey McDonald. You may not know Corey because he's a little shy, but from time to time, I exchange an email or a call with Corey, and he'd always say that I should have like a dinner party or a wine tasting or a garage sale or something like that to raise funds for choroideremia. And, I'd always leave just thinking that he was well-intentioned, but he was delusional because how can me having a garage sale or a wine tasting solve a disease to raise that kind of funds? It'd be a token gesture at best. So Julie and I did start giving some funds through our work, which got matched, but that was about all we did back then. But then around 2004, a group of CHMers were going to run in a marathon in Kelowna, British Columbia as a fundraiser. And I've never been a runner per se, but I like physical fitness. So I thought, well, this could be my token gesture for my cause. So I trained extremely hard and sent out fundraising requests to every friend and family member I knew. And I ended up raising $28,000 in that one race. And this made me realize that there's no such thing as a token gesture. And there were indeed things that I, as an individual, could do to help find treatments. So it was running that kind of began me to get out of the depression, I'd say. It definitely played a role because when I was training, I'd run as hard as I could. And when you run so hard, you quit thinking about what's on your emotions, but because you're hurting so bad. But that period, it was about so much more because to a very large extent, it was the cheerleading and the camaraderie that came along with the running. In Kelowna, it was the first time I'd ever been around other CHMers, people with similar feelings and struggles as I was having. I met some lifelong friends there. And the people within the CRF were incredible. The gratitude and support they gave me, it made me feel not so much alone anymore. I have to say, make no mistake, that Julie, my wife, she's the most incredible person I've ever met, and companion and supporter, but she had no idea how to deal with either. So I felt like between the two of us and all our efforts, we were just winging it. But within the CRF, I now had a group of people with comparable feelings and experiences, and we were now joined in a common cause.
You know, I have to just interject something here real quick, guys. If I fade out, Jeff, sometimes we have sirens and everything going on around here. So you and I had kind of a script here. We're going, if I don't jump in, you just keep going.
Oh, sure.
Keep going.
If
So
you get hit by a tornado, Beth, let us know ahead of time, okay?
I think you guys will know. It's pretty nuts out. So tell us more about, you really ran and you came up, I think it was actually Corey that came up with the name Superman, but you actually ran 10 marathons, right? Over a number of years. Tell us about that.
I did. And Corey, I have to say, it's so funny. You have called me Superman through the years, but I don't believe I'm deserving of that, man. I mean, I love it when you say it, but I did run 10 marathons and I did run them hard. It was after that first one in Kelowna, for not really knowing what I was doing or how to train, I felt like I ran fairly well. So I got into my head that if I could, I get my time a little bit better, I could get some public attention maybe, and that would garnish more support. So I really started training hard at that point and soliciting donations along the way. And more than anything, I tried to get as much media attention as I could. And that effort and those attempts was enough to get some local coverage. I got on several TV news, and I got on a radio show, several newspapers, and even a couple of magazines. So what was interesting about that was that every one of these was a rung on a ladder. If this news station covered you, then the next one it was easier to get. They were interested. And then the next marathon, they'd want to do a follow-up story. So then the more people who heard about you through the media outlets, the more networking that could begin. So by the time when I ran Chicago, the fact that I had as much local coverage as I did allowed me to hook up with and actually became pretty good friends with a radio DJ personality in Chicago. And she hooked me up with the Chicago Tribune, as well as she got me the ability to share the Chicago PD pre-tent, or the tent for the pre-race, which was really cool. And I'm not certain, but I think it was the Chicago Tribune article that segued me into a small little blurb in Runner's World, which is a national magazine. And what happened from there was it was only a small little paragraph. There wasn't a whole lot in it, but it did have a small picture in that little paragraph. But that was enough that when I called the shoe company of the shoe that I wore when I ran my marathons, that the guy that I talked to actually saw the Runner's World article. And when I got on the phone, he said, "Oh, I know who you are." And so I asked him if they would sponsor me like in the next marathon. He said, well, they couldn't do that, but the guy on the spot gave $1,000 donation. So it was kind of cool. I mean, you never really know what's going to happen, but the one thing I've learned is if you don't ask, you get exactly what you ask for, which is nothing. And I actually wrote a small article about that in my company's, little monthly leaflet that they had, and it's called "Sometimes What If Is All You Got." And by that, I mean that you can't forecast the future. You can't forecast everything in it. So there are times where you just have to move forward on the chance that something good's going to happen, even if it doesn't. So.
Well, tell us a little bit. You're 100% right. You never know what's going to happen. So tell us a little bit about your leadership roles within the CRF and how did that help kind of build up that foundation or help you keep your gaze looking forward?
Well, the three words, and this is the honest truth, that when I think about the beginnings, especially of my working, on the board of directors with the CRF, were nerves, humility, and then family ultimately. Because see, when I first came onto the board in 2011, and then on the EC in 2012, and I was scared to death because everyone seemed to know so much. There were so many skill sets that I just didn't have. You had people like Corey, and Randy and Eric and Chris, who knew so freaking much about the science of the choroideremia. And then there was John Oster and Danny Boren, who owned their own businesses and knew all the ins and the outs of running an organization. And then there was the president when I came on, who, Beth and I mean this, who had unbelievable personal and organizational skills, and that would be you. But I didn't have any of those skills. But the one thing I did have is I had the ability to dig in. And I spent all my free time studying all things CHM and CRF related. And you remember, Beth, back then, it was like everyone had to be well-versed on everything: the science, the regulatory side, the business side, all the people and the institutions and the interwoven relationships. It was a lot. And I literally have, to this day, hundreds of documents of notes at home with maps drawn here and there and yonder, just trying to keep up. But ultimately, though, my CRF experience introduced me to a group of people who were like extended family to me. And, you know, a lot like family, sometimes you argue, but, you know, you do care for each other and you all have a common goal.
You said that so well, and that time was very special, and we had to work really hard, and we have a great team that's working on our behalf now with, you know, Kathy and the others, and certainly the board of directors. But thank you for saying all of that stuff. And we were a family, and we had just as many phone calls that were to support and love on each other as we did trying to keep up with Randy's documents. I think Carol might be, she was gonna maybe, here she is, I think she is here. Randy was, he kept us on our toes, and he was much beloved as well. So, you know, speaking of emotions, and what's one of the things that I think I respect so much about you is your transparency and your heart. And it's raw and it's true. And it's your experience. And I think it allows a lot of people to nod and say, yes, I have those same things. But tell the group a little bit more about the 2012 keynote that you gave. Tell us how that, because I think we still have that on the website. It can be found. That was a doozy.
Yeah, that speech was a bit of an uncorking of a bottle of emotions for me. I'd been running marathons off and on for about 7 years at that point, and I poured so much energy and emotion into those years. I was still working full time, and my boys, when I started, were 3 and 5. And I really did try not to take time away from them, you know, doing most of my running in the early hours before they woke up. And I was still trying to fundraise, you know, with each marathon. And in between, I was calling media outlets. And all the while I was, you know, I was still getting blinder by the day and fighting depression. The running helped keep the sadness at bay a bit, but it was hard. And I know I find myself at times crying in the showers when, you know, when things would build up too much. And I'm pretty sure Julie did the same. And it was kind of funny, as my boys got older, all of a sudden they started crying every other month or so, because they started to realize that Dad wasn't going to be able to see them eventually. So when I gave that speech, it kind of all came out. But the one thing that has stuck from that speech until now is when I said there is no they. And to this day, I use that in every speech I give. And it spawned from the comment earlier about, you know, the CRF leadership, that during the time, that the way I remembered it was everyone, it wasn't just that everyone had to grab a shovel and start digging. It seems like at times it was everyone grab another shovel and start digging another hole with the other hand. So unlike organizations, big organizations, that is something needed to get done, that either you did it, and if you weren't going to do it, that meant someone that you knew personally and was just as busy as you would have to do it. there was no they group, some mythical they group out there to do it. It was only me or us within the group. So that theme has stuck ever since.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like that was part of the journey. It still is part of the journey in how to get through this. And so coming to full circle, would you share a little bit more about what you say would be the lessons that you've learned, the various experiences that you've had as a CHMer trying to live a normal life? Talk about that.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because I'm a big proponent of honesty. And sometimes honesty is difficult, but I think it does begin with honesty. And hey, let's face it, guys, the obvious about CHM is that it does suck. And that was probably one of the best things a person at work said to me one time when I described it. He didn't try to offer me positive platitudes to make it better. He just said, that sucks. And it was honest. So I don't like the comparison game when people start saying this is worse than that kind of a thing, because you can always find something worse, right? I mean, but let's face it, this disease still sucks. And it's okay to say so. But the thing is, you can't say so all the time. And believe me, I held on to that anger for a lot of years. And I reacted in ways that Julie can tell you I regret to this day. But in the end, you can either decide to be the kind of person that others want to be around, or you can allow this disease to keep you down. And if so, in a place that you're going to be very, very lonely. And I'm not talking about acting happy, because that's different. I'm talking about working extremely hard to get out of that funk. Of the people I'm around, no one of them would say that I'm depressed or sad. They'd tell you I never complain or feel sorry for myself because of my eyesight. And I have rough moments daily, in fact. And I act poorly sometimes because of it. But as Julie will attest to, after each bad moment that I have, I try to recognize it and figure out what caused it. And then I make an effort to adjust that behavior and to do better the next time. And I look at each and every morning as a new day to reboot and do better that day. So the second and kind of the last point I'd like to leave on is to advise the folks on the call to make an effort and really understand the difference between the roads traveled and the destinations reached. And I confused these two a lot for a lot of years. And that caused me a lot of regretful moments. Being a good husband and father have always been at the tops of my priorities in my life. And before choroideremia, I had the how I was going to achieve that all mapped out in my head. I was going to coach my boys, I was going to go camping and fishing and driving them and driving my wife when she was tired and mowing the grass, the normal stuff that every father and husband would do. And the how I had imagined got destroyed with choroideremia. And I spent many, many years mad as hell at that and fighting it at every step of the way and making Julie miserable along the way. But being a good husband and a good father is still obtainable for me. That destination still exists. I just have to take a different road. And yes, it's a much harder road, but the accomplishment to get there, it's a greater achievement. And I hope this is an appropriate place to offer this story, but if you don't mind, I'd like to leave you with just kind of a final story of perseverance during difficult times. That it means a lot to me. So if it doesn't fit, I apologize. But a speech that I'd always wanted to give was at my high school alma mater in a small town called Pittsburgh, Kansas, a couple hours south of here. It's a couple hours south of where I live now. My parents still lived there at the time. It's like 5 minutes from the high school, in fact. So I was finally asked by the administration to give the keynote speech there. at the high school prom dinner back in 2017. And it was similar to tonight's event. It was the theme was supposed to be resiliency during difficult times. So kind of very, very much in line with tonight. And I was really excited because I went to school there with a lot of the kids' parents. Some of the kids' parents were teachers, and even some of my old teachers were still there. So now you have to understand that even though I do enjoy public speaking, I do stress about it a lot. Julie can tell you that it takes me a lot of painstaking hours in front of the computer to get the speech just the way I kind of want it to be. So I knew the prep work for this speech would be especially challenging, but at the time I didn't know how difficult it was going to be, because it was shortly after I was asked to give this speech that my family received the news that my 75-year-old and extremely active and healthy mother, who was still working at the time, in fact, had stage 4 colon cancer. And the next few months were rough. I was still working full time, trying not to neglect my wife and kids. I was on the CRF board still at the time, and I was now on the phone with doctors and lawyers and insurance agents, and all the while my mom was, still fighting for her life. And yes, I was still trying to write this speech that was still important to me. And as the months kind of passed and that prom date neared, I feel like the stars were kind of aligned, and not necessarily in a good way. It was just 2 weeks prior to the speech that I was supposed to give, and we were told that my mom was in her last days, and they didn't know exactly when, but she wasn't expected to make it. She was too weak anymore to have the chemo. Her weight dropped to about 90 pounds, and she wasn't really eating anymore, and she was sleeping a good share of the time through the day. So my sister went down to Pittsburgh and took care of her for a full week, but she needed to get back to her family. So I took the next week with my mom, which coincidentally was the week prior to my speech. It was supposed to be that Saturday. So in the days leading up to that speech, I was taking care of my mom as if she was an infant. I was bathing her, changing diapers, trying to feed her, all of it. And then it was 2 hours before my speech. I was dressed up in my suit and getting ready to leave, and my mom woke up, and I was kind of shocked she even woke up, and she spoke and she said, "Is it time?" And I knelt down in front of her, and I said, "For what, Mom? For me to leave, or you to go to bed?" And she said, "No, for me to die." And I paused and I looked at her and I said, "Mom, I don't know." I said, no one knows for sure. I said, just rest and go to sleep. And I said, "I'll be back in a little bit." And with that, I left for the prom. And I knew I had to give a speech and convince a room full of teenagers that life gets tough sometimes. And you have to rise above that and find a way to keep going. And to them, this night wasn't about me. It was about them. And me breaking down in front of them wouldn't accomplish my goal one bit. And though my mind was all over the place, I believe I gave the speech the way I wanted to. And the teaching staff said that they'd never seen the kids so engaged. So my goal hadn't changed, just the road that I took there got a lot harder. And losing our eyesight or watching a loved one do so, it doesn't make your life easier, and it doesn't make it more fun. It makes it pretty damn hard. And yes, often sad. But I truly believe our goals do not change. I think that we want to feel accomplished, and we want to feel good about ourselves, and we want to be proud of who we are. We want to be loved by those who love us. And we do want to feel resilient in the face of challenges. These, I believe, are our true goals. These are the destinations we seek. The activities we do are just the roads. And yes, those roads have changed for us CHMers. There are a lot more curves and obstacles that we literally can't see. But I think that if we can overcome that in a positive way, that can rival any accomplishment that anybody ever has. And I will say that as far as my mom, that was the last coherent conversation I had with her, because she died 48 hours later. So that's kind of the message I'd hope to give tonight, folks. And I hope that was an okay and appropriate story to end it on. But thank you for your time.
That was an awesome story. I remember when you were going through that. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
it was a challenging time, to say the least. So.
You know, again, I just want to thank you for you. You know, I just want to thank you for being you. And what a great example you are of resiliency, of going through things. You know, as you know, we were talking earlier, and I had written down some notes here. And folks, if you wanted to take a few minutes and, you know, put comments down, ask questions if you want, specifically if there's certain things that maybe that you're stuck in, or you know, you need a push or a pull, or you want to ask Jeff's thoughts on something, please, now's the time to do it. Corey was very generous, and he linked, if you go to the chat feature, folks, he did link in the keynote address, the YouTube, the 2012 keynote that Jeff did at the CRF conference. He's got that there. So as people there's things coming in, but as they are, Jeff, some of my thoughts, I just wanted to kind of wrap up or ask you, you know, so it sounds like, and then correct me if I'm wrong, that, you know, you always were very honest with yourself. You always wanted to make sure that you acknowledge the emotions, you talk to other people about it. And that was a part of the whole choroideremia thing. You didn't hide from them. You thought, well, this sucks, this is hard, and I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep running. I'm going to keep doing. But in spite of that hardship, you chose not to stay. Is this right? You chose not to stay in the depression or the self-pity, but you found ways through. Is that true?
It is, because you know, the reality of this is you are changing. I mean, right? I mean, there's a big portion of your life is changing. So you do have to change with it. And an example that I didn't give, and just shows you a progression in my own life, was something as simple as mowing the lawn. Julie mows our lawn now.
Now the boys are gone.
Yeah. But you know, but the thing is, I fought it forever, and you know, just got worse and worse at it. And then I would stress at not finding the lines, and that was something I gave up. And the positive nature of giving that up, and Julie and I, we take roles in that together. I mean, I pour the gas in it, and I start it, and I carry the bags, and I get all the prep work done. But it's like, you have to be honest. There are things you can't do. So if you lie to yourself and keep fighting it, you're just going to keep adding to the pressure. So be honest about the things you can't do, and grow with it. You know, that's what you have to do to survive. And you will find a way to be happier with it, I think. So
would you give any recommendations to folks who are maybe stuck, or they're struggling mightily with this? What would you suggest that they do?
Well, one of the honest features that I didn't mention is okay, the cane itself it does two things, obviously, and you know, it is used, and I probably use it improperly to help navigate, but it helps others know about you, and it is part of your life, whether you carry it or not. It is part of you. And then it drastically helps the person you're with. I think it probably, for my situation, it helps Julie as much as it helps me, because it explains so much. And I know it took me a long time to be able to carry that cane, but it was probably one of the biggest hurdles that it helped me get over one of the bigger hurdles, I would say. So that's a very positive thing.
Okay. Was there something else that you were going to say?
It kind of, you know, everything will probably, the vein will get back to the honesty factor in that it's so funny when I go to the conventions, I see some of the younger CHMers with the same anger that I had. And it just breaks my heart. And I think some of that anger does come with some of the denial that, you know, that I'm going to keep fighting as if I don't have this. And the thing is, you do have it, and it sucks, but you do. So kind of embrace it, and then you can move on with it. And you can find ways of feeling better, but you do have to acknowledge it. And again, it goes back to the honesty factor.
I'm gonna zip through some of these real quickly. Let me see. Laura says, great talk. Thank you, Jeff. Sarah, thank you so much. It's amazing to leave this meeting with such a good and positive feeling, even after shedding a few tears as you discuss those early tough years. Thanks, Sarah. I think there was a problem initially. Rhonda says there was a problem with the link. Someone else said that too, but Corey's, I think it's worked out. And folks, we'll send that link out too. We'll make sure we link that up with the recording. I think it's worked out. Here we go. Tom says, Jeff, you are amazing, and we should all aspire to make a difference, much like yourself. I will never forget coming to, oh goodness, Olathe. Maybe that's a
Olathe.
Huh?
It's Olathe, Kansas. Yeah, that's right where I live, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Olathe, a month after finding out about my diagnosis,
Yes.
you and Julie opened your doors and welcomed me into your home to talk. I will never forget it. Thank you.
Remember that. Thank you very much. I definitely remember that. Thank you.
Corey says, whether you agree with me or not, you truly are a Superman, my brother.
Corey, I echo that right back at you, buddy. And I mean that.
You know, let's see, Rhonda, Jeff, I can't wait to run with you again soon, although you're still too stinking fast for me to keep up with you.
Rhonda, I think you actually beat me in the last marathon we ran, so I'm not sure anymore.
Wow. Any more thoughts, Jeff? Anything else that you want to share?
I think that I'm going to offer the same thing that has always been offered to me with both the friends that I've met, the CRF staff and friends, other friends. Rhonda Timko was one of the ones I met in Kelowna, in that if you need help, ask. I mean, anybody who wants to email me can email me, and you know, I'll give you any advice I have. Some of it's maybe good, some of it's probably bad. You know, I'll be as honest as I can, but just, you know, people are out there willing to help. I'm willing to help, and I think everyone on this call is willing to help, and it does help. Believe me, it really does help. So reach out to people is what I would advise.
That's excellent. I think that's good too. It's good for even for the moms too, Jeff.
Absolutely.
You know, it's one of those things that when you are with a group of people that you can talk and just be real. And
I didn't say enough about the moms. I can't express enough how bad I feel. My sister is a mom of a child that she's fighting for. And I feel just as sorry for the moms. I couldn't imagine to be in those shoes either. So I'm with you guys as much as anybody.
Well, you are much beloved. Kathy Wagner, real quickly here. Kathy chimed in. If anyone else is inspired to run a marathon to benefit the CRF, oh, good plug. After hearing Jeff, we still have 2 bibs for the 2021 November 7th New York Marathon remaining. So just email info@curechm.org for more information.
New York's a fantastic marathon. I never did it, but I've heard fantastic things. So if you had the opportunity, I'd do it.
I hear it's on some people's bucket lists, not on mine, but
it should be. It's a good one.
Wow. Jeff, as always, Thank you. Thanks just for being you again. And you're a blessing to this organization and to so many people. And to me personally, you were the right person. I am glad that we did this talk, and we're going to put it on our YouTube channel. It'll be on our website, and um, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that will be clicking on this and re-listening to this and re-listening again when they need that infusion of hope, and courage and strength to know that this too will pass and you will get through it. And for everyone, you have a family of the CRF brothers and sisters who are here just to go through it with you. Here's some more. Jeff, I love hearing you speak. You speak from the heart, and we need that. And then that was from Laura, and then Rhonda again. Love you to the moon and back, Jeff. I think that's a good note to end on,
Anything I
Rhonda.
can do, anybody, just let me know. So Beth, thank you very much for organizing this. Corey too, thank you for all the organization. Kathy, everybody, thank you.
Thank you so much. And folks, thank you for coming. Thank you for enduring the beginning and the swap up with the invitation. Have a great evening, everybody. And just once again, I want to make sure I thank our sponsors, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.